Hi guys, welcome to another Road Pilgrim car review. It's a Monday morning and it's pretty busy in the roads behind me, so a little bit more noisy today. But in any case, today's review is actually pretty exciting because we have the new EQS SUV on review with us. And of course, this is Mercedes' new flagship electric SUV. So this is full size, 7 seats, ultra luxurious. And for today's review, we're going to go check out its exterior, jump inside the car, check out its luxurious interior, and then of course we're going to go take it for a drive and see how it performs on the road. But before we do all that, if you are a driver in Singapore and you're thinking about selling your car for the best price possible or for consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below, because through that link we'll be able to help you provide the best quote possible. So it's free to inquire. Please check it out if you need any help selling your car. Actually, on that note, if you need help renewing your insurance for your car on a year-to-year basis, you can also check out the other link in the description. We can also help you to do that, and the inquiry is also free to inquire. So without any further ado, let's get on with the review. Alright, so this is the exterior of the EQS SUV, and now that the car is parked in a sort of isolated space, you can't really tell how big it is, but when you park it beside another car, you can actually see what a behemoth this car is. It's not as monstrous as, say, a Land Rover Defender 130, but it is still pretty big as far as cars go. But I think the styling is actually pretty understated, and I think that's quite a nice thing. It's not too vulgar. In fact, when I was parking it at a shopping mall over the weekend, it wasn't really too attention-seeking. I haven't really had too many people stare at this car, which I'm not sure whether you feel like that's a good thing or a bad thing, but generally speaking, I think if you are the sort of person that wants a luxurious, premium, expensive car, but you don't really want to attract too much attention, the Mercedes EQ range is probably a good one to look at, because they are quite subtle in terms of their styling. What is not so subtle though is this front grille, which is plastered with Mercedes-Benz 3-star logos. I think it looks very cool, actually, to be honest. I think it looks very premium. But it is a little bit much in terms of how many Mercedes-Benz logos you find. But anyway, I think the front end looks very, very nice. It looks very cool. This is a AMG trim. This car is an AMG trim. So you do get bits and pieces that are a little bit more sporty than the electric art version of the car. But in terms of the powertrain and the drivetrain, they're actually all the same, so you don't really have to worry about that. They all drive the same. It's just that the car looks a little bit different. So in the AMG line car, these are the standard wheels, the AMG design wheels. And although they are AMG design wheels, they're not particularly sporty as well. They're not particularly low profile. So what you get here is, let me see, 275, 21-inch wheels all around. And then what you get is, of course, this sort of side step. This is not retractable. This is a fixed panel. So my experience with it has been a little bit of a love-hate, because my daughter loves stepping on it before climbing into the car. In fact, I think it's the only way she'll get into the car, because she's only 6 years old. But I realized that when you want to get out of the car, you do have to reach quite a distance with your legs before you can actually sort of step onto ground. And if you don't time this properly, you actually kind of run the risk of scuffing the rear of your pants on the side of the side step, which, if it were dirty, would definitely dirty your clothes. So I don't think this particular feature is the best executed. I think a retractable step would be a lot cooler. But then again, that would cause the same problem in terms of scuffing. But in any case, I think the way to get in and out of this car is probably to just use the side step. So that's something for you to consider. Not a make or break feature, but anyway, just a point of refinement, considering that this is a rather luxurious car. Now, this is the rear of the EQS SUV. So I think the rear end looks really, really good, actually. This is the part that looks really premium and expensive. I think this is probably the money shot. The rear bumpers that you see in polished black I think that's very seamlessly fitted to the car. And of course, the full light bar is also very, very cool. But then again, there are quite a number of cars with full light bars today. Now I'm going to show you the boot as well, because it is quite large. So this is a large boot. And over the weekend when my wife and I were out golfing, this car can actually fit two golf bags diagonally, but in the same angle. So we didn't have to cross them across each other, which I think was good, because you don't want to kind of mess with your bag. But most cars, you probably have to crisscross them. This one, you can put them side by side. But nonetheless, even though this is an EQS SUV, you will not be able to put them down flat and straight. Of course, that being said, you can always knock down some of the seats, because this is split in a 60-40 configuration. In fact, I think it might be 30-30-30. But in any case, the other way is to knock down the rear seats and of course put in your golf bags. Now, you'll notice that there are aircon vents here as well, and these are actually in effect for the third row of seats that you see embedded here. So if the third row of seats were up, it would actually extend up to about this line here, which means that you still have a sizable portion that you can use for groceries, duffel bags and whatnot. So pretty decent stuff. I think this is as practical as cars go. Although I wish they made a car that could fit two golf bags vertically in. But in any case, that's a very specific problem to myself. So let's not dwell too much about that. Let's jump into the cabin, check out how the car is on the inside. Let's go. Alright, so now we are in the front. Alright, so this is the cabin of the EQS SUV. Welcome, welcome. It's a very nice place to be. And the first thing that captures your attention is obviously the new MBUX system, because this is not just front and center, this is the entire dashboard. So, appearance-wise, the new infotainment system is actually sort of integrated into the infotainment unit and the digital driver's display feel like they are sort of integrated into the same panel. Of course, within the panel, there are still separations in the screen, so they are not a continuous screen. But nonetheless, this is probably one of the most premium infotainment integrated displays that we have seen in a while. So obviously, with BMW, integrated curved display happens, and that's used on almost all the BMW cars. But in the Mercedes-Benz, we have seen the older MBUX systems, which is a sort of a portrait style panel in the middle. But this is going to set the tone going forward. I'm not sure if this is going to trickle down to all models in the Mercedes-Benz range, but this is definitely what you will find in the more premium set of cars higher up the spectrum of the Mercedes-Benz stable. And if that's not good enough, there is actually something very, very unique as well in this car, which is the existence of what Mercedes calls the Hyperscreen. Now, the Hyperscreen actually sits in front of the passenger side. I'm not sure you can see it. I don't think you can. But in any case, it doesn't really matter because there is no passenger in the front seat now, and the Hyperscreen does not turn on when there is no passenger. There's no way I can turn it on, or at least I don't think there is. I've tried a few ways. But in any case, there is a proper sized separate screen in front of the passenger that will allow the passenger to toggle most of the car settings, and also toggle like infotainment stuff, like for example, if you want to change a song, you want to turn on your massage chair. These are all things that the passenger can utilize the Hyperscreen for. Now, is the Hyperscreen absolutely necessary? Honestly, no. I don't think it does anything special that you can't do on the infotainment unit here, but it does do quite a bit to set this car apart from the rest of the competition, because this is just next level stuff. I think going forward, we are starting to see third screens appear in the cars, because you've got, of course, your main infotainment unit, you've got digital driver's display, so that's two screens, and some cars have started incorporating a third screen. Like for example, the new Tesla Model 3 has a third screen in the rear. But all that aside, I think all those things are not make or break features. They're just very, very cool features to have. Going back to the rest of the cabin here, generally speaking, it's a very well built cabin. I don't think the modern cars are as well built as the ones from before, but still the build quality is very high. And I think coming from the last generation of EQ cars, like for example the EQC, that had the older MBUX system with the physical buttons on the bottom, I think those were a little bit iffy in terms of build quality. But with this new screen, there's really there's really not much else to fault in terms of build quality. So everything is of course integrated into the screen. Even your temperature controls are touchscreen now. You've got your regular menu here. It does come with Apple Carplay, wireless, which interestingly Mercedes-Benz haven't always had this feature. It's in fact, I would say it's a feature that has only come online within the last like 1.5 years. So that's really nice to have. Elsewhere around the cabin, you've got a Mercedes-Benz steering wheel with the standard sort of two-tiered buttons, where they are actually put on two separate stalks or arms of the car. This is a AMG spec, so you do get it doesn't say, or it doesn't put AMG on this wheel, but it does look like the AMG wheel in the sense where it is flat bottomed. Very, very nice girth to it, and there are varying girths as well at the bottom and the side of the steering wheel. So depending on what you like, you can actually hold on to different parts of the car, or the steering wheel, sorry. There's a huge bunch of options when it comes to ambient lighting and comfort settings, and this is actually really, really cool. So maybe I'll just show you a couple to kind of pique your interest. So under the lights and the ambient lighting, you've got a choice of putting a monochrome set of colors. So you just choose one color, for example, and this is 64 colors, so quite a lot of options. I don't think you'll ever run out of options here. So I'm going to put it to a green so that you can see roughly. Oh no, green's not a great color to see in the daytime, huh? Let's try red. Let's try red. So red is pretty obvious here. Blue is pretty obvious too, I think. Yeah, looks really good. And if you can't really make up your mind, or you prefer a spectrum of colors, they do have a multi-color setup that lets you kind of split the personality of your interior, give it some blended hues, which I think is also very nice. Are these features important? No, they don't change the way the car drives, but do they make the car feel more premium? Absolutely. I think these are little things that separate the common cars and the uncommon cars, and that's, I think, still a very nice thing to have. After all, in a car that costs quite a bit of money, I think you would generally want to see features like that to kind of brighten up your day. Now, looking at the rest of the dashboard, the interior, there is a center cubby here which houses two cup holders, wireless charger. I believe it's a wireless charger, seems like it. And there are also two USB ports embedded here. So when you don't want this to be exposed, or you don't want this to be seen, you can actually close it, and then you get this wonderful wood finish panel, which is emblazoned with quite a number of your three-pointed star logos, which I think is really, really cool. And it's actually kind of they're not the same size, they're actually different in size. So visually, there's a sort of a texture going on with this very, very nifty piece of design that creates texture in the car, I believe. And I'm all for it, man. I think it's super cool. Further down, you get your start-stop button. You've got express buttons to your camera, electric drivetrain management systems, car settings. You got your drive modes in terms of your dynamic and all, and your sports mode and your comfort mode and your eco mode, so on and so forth. Infotainment power button. You've got a mute button, and you've got volume controls here as well. Now, I think the placement of this panel is a little bit strange, if I'm being very, very honest, because as I'm driving and I want to put on my hazard lights, I actually have to do this, which is pretty awkward. What we are typically used to is to have a button that is maybe higher up here that you reach for rather than you lean back for, just purely because you don't want to take your eyes off the road, right? As you're pulling up to a sort of a junction or the side of the road or sort of pickup point. I discovered that I had to kind of look down, which was a little bit sketchy if there are a lot of people around and the car is so huge. So I would have preferred if these buttons were positioned a little bit higher up, but in any case, it is what it is. So obviously there are other very, very nice features in the car to look forward to as well. There are massage seats in this car, so very, very nice. And the massage seats aren't just massage seats, they come with a whole bunch of presets, and some of the presets are actually heated as well, so these seats are also heated. So aside from the massage function, I don't think you will ever use the heated seat in Singapore, but what you will however utilize is the fact that this car does come with ventilated seats, which is like a godsend, because Singapore weather, you just absolutely want the ventilated seat option. Last but not least, there's so many things to talk about in this car, which is a good thing, I guess. So this car is one of the first cars in the world to be fitted with a Dolby Atmos Surround Sound System. But I believe the tracks that you play have to be programmed or configured in the Dolby Atmos Surround format, a little bit like watching an IMAX movie. You know, you can't just watch any movie in the IMAX theater. You have to watch an IMAX formatted movie in an IMAX theater. So there is quite a limited amount of Dolby Atmos surround tracks at the moment in the song bank, but I guess as time goes by, this number will increase. We actually listened to the system during the launch of the EQS SUV, and there was a sort of a demo track playing, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. Easy to say that it was the best sound system I've ever heard in any car ever. In this car, however, I haven't been able to access Dolby Atmos, but it does come with Burmester Sound System, which is a pretty standard feature across the luxury end of Mercedes-Benz. So these are really, really good as well. Definitely better than your average Harman Kardon system that you find, which I think are not very good to begin with. But the Burmester system, I think, is a step above that. Perhaps not as good as like a Meridian or Canton sound system, but still very, very nice and realistic in terms of sound staging. So for all those of you who are audiophiles, I think sound staging is going to be extremely important. Further up, rooftop, you've got two pieces of glass. So this is a two-piece panoramic roof. I don't really care too much for it, but I think the kids love it, so pretty cool feature to have. Speaking about kids, let's jump into the back of the car and see how the rear of this car, or the second row of this car, functions. Alright, so now I am in the second row of the EQS SUV. This driver's seat is in my regular driving position, and I am 175 meters tall, and this is the amount of legroom that I have. Absolutely large amount of legroom, so this is super comfortable. In terms of headroom, it's definitely more than enough, but it's not super great. And I want to talk a little bit about this as well, because the whole car is only about just slightly above 1.7 meters tall, which means that as a large size SUV, this car is actually not very tall. Now, there are pros and cons to this. The cons, obviously, you don't have as much headroom, or rather the car, in terms of its cabin, still feels, you know, it doesn't feel super high up. But the good part is that you've got very good clearance in terms of going to malls, which means despite being a large car, you don't have any problems going into any car parks in Singapore. So I was going around, and essentially the lowest car park you'll find in Singapore is probably about 1.8 meters, and that's like in the, you know, car parks like Queensway Shopping Centre, and this car will actually clear it. So you don't really have any limitation. Previously, when I was driving the Velfire on tests, I had to really go and search and find out which car parks were of a certain height, and then I will have to avoid those places actively. Now, in a day-to-day or in a real life use case, would I want to avoid any car parks in Singapore? Probably not. I would probably want to have the freedom of going into any car park. And if I have the affluence that I can afford a car like that, would I want to be held back by the fact that I can't go into certain car parks? That would be quite ironic, right? Well, you don't have to worry about that in the EQS SUV because the car is of a very reasonable height. The other good thing about it is that in terms of the way the car feels in the cabin, I would say that it still feels quite sedan-like. In fact, it feels like a very roomy sedan. So that's great because it then feels a bit more premium. Because I've always held the sentiment that sedans generally are still the more stately car, so to speak, and the better car to have. And the better car to have in terms of exuding a sort of a luxury vibe. Okay, but anyway, this is the amount of rear leg room that I have. The rear passengers have their own air conditioning climate zone. So there are actually it's a 4-zone climate system because you've got 2 at the front and 2 in the rear here. And take note, there are actually third row seats in this car. It's just that I don't think it's really worth pulling the seats out. You just need to know that there are 3 rows of seats if you should ever want to use them. But objectively speaking, the roof does start to slope back there, so there's not going to be a huge ton of leg room anyway. This is really meant for smaller size people or for, you know, young children, like primary school age going children, to sit in the back if you should so desire. But for all intents and purposes, I think this car will probably do its best work as a 5-seater, a very luxurious 5-seater. You've also got air conditioning vents on the B pillars, which I am extremely fond of because I think the aircon vents in the middle don't do a very good job in general. And back here, if you open up the panoramic roof, the whole car does just feel very, very spacious and very pleasant to be in. The fit and finish of the rear part of the cabin is just as good as the ones that you find in front. You don't get ventilated seats, but you do get heated seats as well. So if you are ever using this car in a winter country, which is impossible because you're watching this review for a car that you buy in Singapore, but anyway, there are heated seats in the rear should you ever require them. And generally, this is a very comfortable place to be. If you're going to use this car as a family car, it will definitely swallow up a rearward facing child seat, so you don't have to worry about that. But I think that's quite a given. I think that's quite pointless to say. The floor here is flat in the second row, so if you were to carry 3 passengers in the rear, I think that will be quite reasonable, and I think that will be quite doable. Although the middle seat here is sort of sunken in a bit, or it's cut out a little bit, so you do get slightly less under thigh support. So I guess the middle passenger will have to be a smaller person or somebody who doesn't mind sitting in a that sort of position for a longer period of time. So in terms of adjustment, the rear seats are also adjustable forward and backward. And I guess this is the part that will create room for the third row passenger. But once again, I think then if you were to move forward too much, then you kind of compromise the luxury experience of the second row passenger. But anyway, these are controllable from oh yes, so these are electronically adjustable. Can they recline? No, so that was already the most reclined position. You can move the seat more upright if you want. Upright. Sit straight. Like your mother always says, sit straight. I can't sit straight because I have my cap on backwards. Okay. There we go. Alright, so there you have it. The rear, the second row of the EQS SUV. Very nice place to be. Now, is the EQS a nice car to drive? Let's jump back into the driver's seat. Take it for a drive. and find out. Let's go. Alright guys, so up on the roads now in the EQS SUV, and to get some base specifications out of the way, the EQS SUV has a rather large battery pack. In fact, it has a 108 kilowatt hour battery pack, and this is configured with a dual motor setup, so one motor on each axle of the car, so one in front, one in the back. And together, these motors produce about 300 over horsepower. And this is actually good for 800 Newton meters of torque, which is actually quite a high torque figure. But of course, you have to consider that the whole car does weigh about 2.8 tons, which is a rather heavy car as well. So if you offset these numbers and you pit them against each other, at the end of the day, this car will do 0 to 100 in about 6 seconds, which of course 6 seconds is not very quick, but it's no slouch either, especially if you consider that this is such a heavy car. So a 2.8 ton car, 0 to 100 in 6 seconds, you can imagine the sort of inertia that you're experiencing in the car. It's actually quite a sensation. Later on the highways, I'll show it to you as well, and I've been driving this car around for the entire weekend before shooting this review, so quite an interesting car to drive in that sense. But now that we are on city roads or town roads or start-stop traffic, just want to talk a little bit about how the car feels in town as well. So despite the weight, the 800 Newton meters of torque does do a fairly good job at moving the car off the line. So at no point in the drive do you feel any sort of sluggishness. In fact, the car is very easy to move off the line, and actually around town, to be honest, it feels like a lighter car as well. It's super comfortable, I must say, and that's one of the things that you immediately notice about the EQS SUV. And it's actually pretty surprising because although the car is so comfortable, I was actually pretty shocked to find out that it doesn't actually run on air suspension, which of course, from a maintenance standpoint, that's actually quite a good thing, quite a reassuring thing as well, because then you get the comfort of air suspension. In fact, I think the ride quality is actually quite comparable to a car equipped with air suspension, but you don't, of course, have the maintenance cost that is associated with air suspension. I mean, that being said, the EQS SUV does still run a fairly complicated multi-link suspension setup in the front and the rear. So I think that's obviously going to require some level of maintenance down the line as well. But based on what we know today, air suspensions are the ones that are probably a little bit more costly to maintain. So it's probably a good thing that you can achieve such a high level of comfort without having to use the most expensive bit of kit. So generally speaking, I would say the car is super comfortable around town. And once you're up at higher speeds as well, everything is ultra comfortable. Insulation in the car is actually impeccable because the wheel hubs on this car are actually quite large. But although they are quite large, you actually don't really get any sort of tire roll coming through into the cabin when you're up at higher speeds as well. So I think that's a really positive thing, and I think that's also something that you would expect from a high-end Mercedes-Benz, and not just any Mercedes-Benz, but something that sits pretty high on the spectrum in terms of the entire stable of cars. So I think this is really, I would say this is like when we talk about comfort in general, the level of comfort you get from the EQS SUV is probably a little bit next level compared to cars, like everyday cars that you get, like say a 5 Series or an E-Class. This is definitely a little bit higher. So now we are up on the highways, and you know, as I mentioned earlier, even if you're going at highway speeds, you don't really get any sort of road noise or wind noise actually. So interestingly, despite the fairly bulbous exterior, the drag coefficient on this car is actually pretty low, so it's a pretty aerodynamic car. And one of the things that you often get with large SUVs like that is you get wind roar as early as 90-100 kilometers per hour, but in the EQS SUV, I think that it has been moderated a little bit, and I think it's definitely quite a bit better in that regard. Now, let's talk about the driving configurations, because I would say that being a super large family size electric SUV that weighs 2.8 tons, there are definitely some concerns when it comes to chucking the car around corners. So I don't think this is something that you'll probably buy to chuck around corners. And to be frank, when you are chucking it around a corner in comfort mode, it does feel a little bit it does lean a little bit, I'll be very honest. Although the car has never sort of given me any sort of reason to worry, in a sense where it hasn't lost grip or it hasn't leaned excessively, you do feel like the weight from the batteries does want to pull you to one side a little bit. So I think that's something that you will need to, or it's just something good to have in mind when you're purchasing a car like that, because you really can't expect a car of this stature, this build and form, to be nimble and agile around a corner. That being said, when you do put the car into sports mode, I feel like the car does react a little bit, or it does change quite significantly. So in terms of the way the electric motors deliver the power, steering weight as well, all these things do kind of take a next step up, and then it becomes quite a lot more comfortable to drive in a more spirited way. And in fact, what I discovered was that on certain trips, I actually found the car more comfortable in general to drive in sports mode. Not because I had any intention of driving a little bit faster during the trip, but just overall the car just seems a little bit more firm and a little bit more planted in that sense, which I kind of like. So my daily driver is it's an F105 series, and I do have another E92 3 series, and both cars are set up to be quite firm in that sense. They're both lower, and the whole idea of that is to reduce the amount of bounce and the amount of waftiness that you get. So I guess to a certain extent, I'm used to that sort of comfort. And coming into the EQS SUV, I would say that I feel a little bit more comfortable driving the car around in sports mode. I'm not sure what that does for the economy of the car. In fact, this car has a quoted range of about 610 kilometers on a single charge, which is actually pretty impressive. In the real world, I would say you would probably get somewhere between 550 to 580 if you're conservative, or if you are careful in the way that you drive. Of course, if you're a lot more used to accelerating hard, then I think you'll definitely lose out on range there. But all that being said, I think 500 over kilometers is a pretty good number for a car that weighs this much once again. So definitely in terms of application, I think this is a car that you want to buy to kind of take things easy and take things slow. It's a very comfortable car, and it does exude a lot of premium vibes. If you just look at the interior, the way the whole car is set up, the way the ambient lighting is set up, it's still not too bright, so I believe you can see a little bit of the ambient lighting. So this is absolutely beautiful at night. I really enjoy this. My daughter loves it, which is why you can see the pink. Our choice of ambient lighting is actually pink, and I think the whole setup does make the car feel very, very posh, very premium. And you know, when you're in a posh and premium car, you know, going fast isn't necessarily the key thing. In fact, I don't think it even features in the top 3 most important things to have in the car. And 6 seconds from 0 to 100 is an extremely respectable number to have in a car already. You know, if you are coming from a similarly priced petrol powered car, a non-performance petrol powered car, you will also likely be looking at performance figures around this range. So I think this is a very well matched car, and I think for existing owners of cars that are like petrol power cars of this kind of caliber, I think you will find the luxury, or the like in terms of luxury, I think you will find the shift quite easy to handle. You know, it definitely is a super premium car. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think this is probably one of the most upmarket premium SUVs we've tested in the recent year, because if you look at it, BMW doesn't really have a 7-seater premium electric SUV on offer at the moment, and the closest thing I can think of is actually the Q8 e-trons from Audi, but those are strict 5-seaters, and I think in terms of the overall opulence and luxury that you get from the car, I think the Mercedes-Benz is definitely one step higher. There is already an EQE SUV on the market. We have yet to test it, but we will test it out very soon. So I think that might be a closer fit to the, or closer comparison to the Q8 e-tron, both in terms of price and size. But at the current moment, I think if you find that this is a little bit too much, you don't really have too many other options on the market either way. So those are just some points of consideration for you if you're looking at a car like that. Now, if you have any questions about the car that I happen to have missed out on, please put your questions in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions about the EQS SUV. And if you have found this review useful in any way, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. We are growing extremely fast in the last few months, and we hope to grow even faster in the next few months. So we would really appreciate your support in subscribing to the channel. We've got new reviews coming out every single week, so it would be wonderful if you could join us for those as well. Now, if you are a driver in Singapore and you are thinking about selling your own used car or consigning it for the best price possible, be sure to check out the link in the description box below. Through those links, we'll be able to provide you the highest possible quote and valuation for your used car. And this is free to inquire. So if you need a quote on your car, please just contact us. We'll be happy to assist. In fact, if you need help with renewing your car insurance as well, we also have another link in the description for you to do that. Once again, it's free to inquire, so if you need a quote for your insurance, please check out the link. And with that, you know, as usual, please take care of yourself, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.